I think we're live. Hey, hello everybody. It's Dave Carson from Free the Mind UK. I'm your host for this evening. I've got a fantastic guest in the way of Clare Cavalli. She's going to be talking about the father wound and, having an absent father, how it can affect our lives going forward. So I'm really excited about that. But before I bring on Clare, I'm going to play our intro video. Here we go.
Not sure what therapy to choose? Free the Mind UK presents A Chat with a Therapist. Join us live for an up-close informal discussion of the various holistic therapies available, helping you make that important choice.
Okay, so before I bring Clare on, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Clare Cavalli is a qualified hypnotherapist and psychotherapist. She's based in Kent in England and specialises in the father wound. Clare also specialises in the menopause, and she uses techniques such as timeline therapy, regression therapy, inner child work, and behavioral hypnotherapy, and probably lots of other techniques that aren't listed here, because as therapists tend to use lots of tools when we're working with people. So without further ado, let us bring on Clare.
Hello,
Clare,
good evening.
how are you?
Hello, everybody
Good to see
watching.
you.
I'm really good, thank you very much.
Oh,
On this
fantastic!
lovely
I'm
sunny
really
day.
pleased. I'm just going to click on the comments button. We've got this is Craig. He said, "Hi, Dave." Obviously, probably wrote that before I introduced you. I'm
Hi,
sure
Craig.
you'll say hi, Clare, as well in a minute. I'm gonna ask Craig, are we live on Facebook, Craig? If you could let me know, I'm gonna have a little look. I hope we are. Let's see. Bear with me, Clare.
No problem.
Because we have had a few problems with this. We're live on Facebook. I'm so happy.
Yay!
Oh my God. First time I actually sorted it. Fantastic. So Clare, once again, thanks for joining us tonight. It's going to be so interesting. I know. I personally have never heard of the term father wound, and I know lots of other people haven't. I'd heard of the mother wound, yeah, but apparently the father wound's less talked about. So before we get into all of that, yeah, let's have a little overview how you ended up in this sort of work, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, of course. Well, I come from a learning and development training background. This was pre-children. I have 3 children, a boy and twin girls. And I, through no choice of my own, became a full-time mum because we unexpectedly had the twins. I couldn't afford to go back to work. My salary would have been covering the childmind, and that's it. So fast forward to later life, the kids were about 9 years old. I started having thoughts about what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to go back into learning and development. And I've always had a real interest and fascination with people. I don't know about yourself, Dave, but I am that person who will sit in a park and watch people. Not because I'm a weirdo, but I just love people watching. They fascinate me. Do you ever have those like caption bubbles in people's heads and thinking they're saying this or they're saying that?
Yeah, I often think, wonder what their life's like. I'd love to be like
yeah. So it's not about being nosy or some kind of weirdo, but people have always, like I say, fascinated me. And I've always been curious anyway because of my own behaviours growing up in the father wound experience, which I'll obviously go on to. And then I discovered cognitive behavioural therapy and psychology online. And I just did an online course, which was an assessment and things like that. And it just really interested me. And then I believe in the universe giving us signs and looking out for certain things. I kept seeing hypnotherapy come up on my list. I don't know whether it was as a result of like the metadata, you know, you've looked up psychology, so
Yeah,
this is related to
exactly.
hip. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I just saw it as a given sign. And I looked into it because I thought it was the classic cliche, Paul McKenna, look into my eyes, there they go, the pendulum, blah, blah, blah. And little did I know what actually it could do. And that's when I started researching, and I looked at lots of different colleges. I also researched hypnotherapy itself to find out what else it could help with. And then my intrigue and interest just grew, and I signed up and did a course a couple of years ago. It's coming up to a couple of years, and I haven't looked back. And I've just extended on sort of like the modalities with it, like you mentioned when you introduced me. And it's just absolutely fascinating about, you know, how the subconscious mind works, because I've had counselling myself in the past, because we all have our own journey, right? We all have our own little things to deal with. And hypnotherapy was something that was much more effective and faster because of going straight to the subconscious rather than just talking about and ruminating over things. And I didn't ever feel like things were getting solved. And here we are as a hypnotherapist, clinical hypnotherapist and psychotherapist. So yes. And I have something else happening next year, which is stum at the moment, but it's exciting that I'm adding to my list.
Oh, fantastic. Well, absolutely. It's interesting as a therapist. I haven't got a TV, Claire, so I don't watch telly. So I have to do things with my time. So I'm often like researching new techniques or studying, you know, trying to keep on top of my game. But yeah, it's good to have a good toolbox.
Definitely. I'm a bookworm myself, and I read the most recent book I read was The Body Keeps the Score. And that is absolutely amazing. And that relates to the thing I'm doing next year as well. So it's all pretty exciting stuff.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. My most recent book, which I've read once before, but I've started reading again, is called Breath by James Nestor.
Yes, I'm going to be buying that. It's on my list.
Is it really? What a fantastic book. Oh my God. It's amazing. Yeah, really,
Didn't
really
he
good.
publish that when COVID happened?
I don't know, to be honest, but I know a lot of people I talk to, I've got his book or reading his book. So it's like, oh wow, it's great, isn't it? Yeah. So it's the second time I'm reading it, because you know what it's like when you read a book. There's so much info in. Personally, when I'm studying, I've got to go over and over and over and over and over.
Yes.
It must be an age thing, I don't know.
Well, it's actually because my learning background, it's learning styles. So we have 4 general learning styles, or some people might know them as VAC, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, which relates to hypnotherapy too. And the learning styles, I'm very much a theorist, and I have to like read something 5 times. Because I had to do that for my professional qualification in training all those years ago. So I had to train myself to be okay reading. But I totally get it. It's like watching a movie. I know you don't have a TV, but if you watch it again, you notice things you didn't see before. And that's like in life every day. You notice different things all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, you could be doing something for like years and then just notice it. And you're like, bugger, I've been doing that for like 5 years of going down here, subconscious mind, you know, whatever. But we have got quite a few people watching us at the minute, so thank you to all those people that are on board and watching this live. If anyone's got any questions as we go forward, just leave them in the comments and I'll put them on the screen, and I'm sure Claire will be very happy to answer them. We do have we have one here for you. Look at that, Craig Bluer. Hello, Claire.
Hi, Craig.
He's one of my avid watchers. Well done, Craig. Even my daughter might be watching as well. So you never know. Aww. She's only 16, but I'm training her up, you know. So anyway, so Claire, let's get to the nitty gritty of stuff, and let's talk about the father wound, because I also my mum and dad got divorced when I was like 6 or 7. And I know my early years, it was I believe, we don't know 100%, but I'm pretty sure my behavior and the way I was definitely directed to that, you know, not having my dad about. So come on, let's hear all about the father wound. We're so excited. I'm sure everyone watching. Loads of people watching. So,
Well, the first thing sorry, there's a bit of a delay there. Sorry to interrupt you there. There's a delay. So the first thing I want to put out there firstly is that every single person's going to be completely different. You know, everything's a case by case scenario, as we know, being therapists. So it's never to pigeonhole people and say, you've got the father wound, so you've got this. It's not about that. It's very holistic in the approach of how someone comes to see me in terms of therapy with the father wound. And it won't show up. They won't know it's the father wound. So even though I specialize in it, it's based on their behaviors. It's based on how it shows up in their relationship, their work life, their love life, and the relationship they have actually with themselves. And it's also not to blame dads. Okay. I don't want this to be like a witch hunt thing of saying, my dad, this is your fault, because they probably didn't know any different themselves. Because sometimes there is, if they've got something called a disorganized attachment style, which is probably one of the most complicated and complex ones out of the attachment styles, which I'll go through. It could be as a result that he's repeating that generational trauma that he's experienced. Okay, so I don't want it to be about the pointing finger. This is not what the conversation's about. With that being said, I know dependent on what a person experienced based on a father wound, which I'll explain in a moment, I'm not condoning that behavior, because the abuse of what someone could actually experience can obviously be something very bad, whether that's verbal abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, emotional neglect, all these different things. There's a variety of different things that you would have experienced from your dad growing up. So he also doesn't necessarily have to be a father who is present in your life. So it could be as a result, like you said, your parents splitting up when you were 6. Mine split up when I was 12. And there's also variety. You could have a dad at home and he may not be emotionally available to you. He may be at home, but he may be an alcoholic or a drug user. Or it could be that you live in a poor area and he neglects your needs because he feels depressed, and that's not his fault. It's just the way it is. But you're not going to know that in your early former years and childhood. You're not going to recognize those things. Okay. Absolutely. So there are things that derive from the attachment styles, like from when you're a baby through to a few months through to being so many years old, etc., which I'm not going to cover today because it's very complex and involved. But the reason I'm talking about this is because there's a lot of people out there who do a lot of, they have a lot of imposter syndrome, self-sabotage in work or in relationships. And it could be a result of the father wound or sometimes the mother wound. And it will be very different for a female to a male, or whatever how you identify. It will be very different because everybody's story is very different. You know, I've got 2 siblings. I've got a younger sister and an older brother. And I'm not going to say in this because of their personal life, and I wouldn't bring them into it. They would have been affected differently to me. Because even though we're brought up with the same parents, you're brought up very differently because they're different people. You're never the same person. I've got my 3 children and they've been brought up differently, you know. So with the father wound, it's also sometimes known as fatherless or daddy issues. So they are other terms that are used in the father wound itself. Okay. And it's through the life experience you have as a child that can impact you later in life. So if you've been abandoned by that emotional need, it might make you have an anxious attachment style. And that will show up in a very sort of like you're wanting to commit to love, but you don't really want to. It's almost like you have this Jekyll and Hyde approach in your head. You're like, you want it, but you know you're going to probably get rejected anyway because you weren't listened to when your daddy was around. Maybe he was a workaholic. Oh no, I'm too busy for that. And he had great intentions to give you the life of a luxury of like going on holiday, but all you needed as a child was that love, security and safety. But and that connection. We need human connection. You know, the Maslow hierarchy of needs. You need your basic food, shelter, water. And if you're not getting those basic needs met, it can show up and affect these attachment styles. Because, you know, John Bowlby, a psychologist in the 1960s, has created the attachment styles, which was then taken by Mary Ainsworth and then extended. And we've got modern psychology today, which then also, you know, psychology is always looking at studies, you know, always improving. So nothing is ever rigid or set in, you know, it's an organic thing, because everybody's story is different and experience. And I think from research and studies, that is where a lot of it can come from. I also know of the other attachment styles, like anxious as well. You've got avoidant, anxious, disorganized, and secure. And with these, it's not to pigeonhole people. And if you were brought up in a secure environment where your father was there for you when he needed, you know, to speak to you on an emotional level, and a physical level, you know, cuddled you if you were feeling, you know, vulnerable and maybe a little bit scared that something happened. He said, no, it's okay. He gave you that safety, that sense of security. You'll have that secure attachment. But that's not to say that later in life, when they then divorce and the dynamics change in that family, suddenly that secure changes to something else, like avoidant or anxious or even disorganized, which is kind of a mix of the anxious and avoidant. And then that can show up as self-sabotaging in relationships. It could show up as being very needy. There's so many different varieties of way, and you could have elements of those different attachment styles. It doesn't mean you're disorganized, it doesn't mean this, and it can result in complex PTSD. It could be PTSD. It's not a one size fits all. It's a very complex case, because everyone's so different.
It's such a big subject, isn't it? Oh my God, Claire.
It's
so interesting. I love it. And obviously, you know, I know from my own story, which I definitely put it down to the lack of father, especially for a guy as well. I mean, it's just as important for a girl not to have a father. Well, I just want to just put up a couple of things people have mentioned here. This is Kaz Webb. Kaz, how are you? I haven't seen you for a long time. I used to know Kaz through networking many years ago. So she's saying, that's so true. My parents split when my little brother passed away. Tough thereon for dad and mum. We've also got Kerry Potts. Do you know Kerry Potts at all, Claire?
The name sounds familiar. Hi, Lisa.
That's
sounds
Lisa.
Very familiar, Kerry.
Yeah, Kerry, she's a lovely lady. Hi, Kerry. Hope you're well. And thank you for watching. So we've got also Lisa again. My father was a great man, but never had a von Dusten father on his life, and left an emotionally abusive relationship at a very young age. I picked up on his wounds. Bless you for sharing that with us, Lisa.
Thank you for sharing that, Lisa.
Hang on, she said, she says something there. She apologizes. Apologies consistent. That's what she meant. I knew there was something wrong there. I should have guessed what it was, actually, but I was a bit slow there. But yeah, like you said, there's so many different ways this can show itself in behavior. I mean, personally, I hope my daughters aren't watching, but me and my ex-wife split up, you know, but we have a great relationship. But I can definitely see some behaviors in one of my daughters in particular that I'm sure I'll be helping her with going forward, you know.
But this is the thing, Dave. Don't see it as and it kind of reflects back to my point I made earlier, in that this isn't about pointing the finger and blame. And I think when we're educated, it allows us to remedy those situations rather than, you know.
I've got to be honest.
One's perfect.
I'll never feel guilty about it, because where I am in my thinking is, it is what it is, and everything's perfect, you know. And there's always beauty in everything, even the worst things that are happening in the world. There's some beauty in there. You just got to find it, and you know, go from that. So I'm good with that. But obviously, you know, being a therapist, I recognize some behaviors, but it is what it is, and it's be an organic thing. Hopefully, you know. Well, we'll see what happens anyway. But let's see what else. Kerry again. Here we go. So Kerry Pot says, I have never met my biological father and wonder how that may have impacted my life. Well, and what do you think about that, Claire?
That's quite a tough one to answer, because the reason I say that, if I share a little bit, if it's okay with you, Kerry, with my story, and how I ended up specialising in this, because I had to heal my own father wound in order to be able to help others. And I want it to be an inspiration to let people know that, you know, you've got to have hope, you've got to keep the faith.
Absolutely.
And as cheesy it sounds, love does conquer all. In terms of not meeting your biological father, I don't know if you've ever seen, is it Long Lost Family? That I've forgotten her name, begins with D. My menopause brain. Davina McCall, that's it, Davina McCall. Thank you. I knew the go with T. Hey. Anyway, she and this other guy, they often, if people were adopted, you know, they would try and find their biological father, and it does affect you, because part of you almost feels like it's missing, like your identity, I guess you might say, because you haven't had that part of your life dealt with. And sometimes it's, you know, accepting it and it's being at peace with it. And sometimes people can't do that, so they would need to see a therapist to work through that process, but also ask themselves, what is it they want to get out of possibly knowing the biological. Do you know if your biological father is alive at all, if you don't mind me asking, Kerry? You know, because everybody's different in terms of how they want to approach it. Now, I would never advise what a person should do with their own personal choices, because it's about working through how it's affecting them personally and what they feel they need from that. Is it closure? Is it this? So if okay with you, Dave, I'll explain a little bit about my own personal
Absolutely.
story.
Fire away. I mean, go ahead. Fire away.
And how it affected me, so you can have some kind of understanding and insight as to how it has personally affected me. And some people might even be able to relate to this story, and if they do, fantastic. And you know, you'll have my contact details at the end if you just want to reach out and just have a chat, not therapy, but you want to follow me and get to know the story. At least then you'll start to feel like you can relate to other people, because sometimes this journey can feel very isolating when you have the father wound. Oh, wow. Okay, that's amazing. How do you feel about that, Kerry? And
a therapy session here, Kerry.
Yeah. Approving. And so I was close to my dad in the former years of my childhood, from what I remember. But I also remember he was a man who wasn't present a lot. Okay, he was always working. And I think the key thing that I came to terms with and that I accepted in my adult life when I went through my own therapy is that he did the best that he could do with what he had. He was an exceptionally young dad when I was born. He was 17. So he was a kid himself. But me being a child, I wouldn't have obviously known that. I wouldn't know any different. So that's not his fault, right? But unfortunately, as the years progressed and certain things happened in the family, he wasn't emotionally available to me. And there was a lot of things that were said that would upset me. Like, you know, he gave a bit of abuse in terms of saying I was ugly and things like that. And for me personally, and how it showed up, I guess in my attachment style, it was a mixture of the anxious and avoidant, because he was always working hard, but he wasn't there for me emotionally. So I would always get close to people, and I'd always seek it later in life in my relationships. And I don't want to speak badly of myself, but I was always trying to look for a relationship. So I would seek in different men what I didn't get from my dad, but I didn't know that at the time, because I needed that love, because I didn't love myself. I had no self-worth. I had low self-esteem, and my confidence shone in my work. So that's where I just channeled all my energy. I became like a workaholic. I knew that that's where I could perform. I knew that I would get praise there, but I'd never get praised by my dad. And all I wanted was for him to say he was proud of me, for him to say he loved me. But he actually said to my face, I will never be that dad you want me to be. You need to get out of your fairy tale head. And that was a hard thing to accept. Very, very hard to accept. There's been a lot of tears. I've done breath work. I've done therapy. And I'll be honest with you, I did see a psychiatrist in my 20s because it affected me in a place where I had very bad depression and I tried to take my life. And that's how low it got for me, sadly. But, you know, I've never looked back. I am so happy now. You know, I have my own family. And that's the other reason. That's when I knew that things really got bad for me. And in terms of not being able to work through the trauma, it's like I suppressed it through shopping. I got into 20 grand's worth of debt, Dave, 20 grand, because I was looking for something that was never there. I kept trying to make other people happy. I became the people pleaser. I became anxious. I tried to be someone I wasn't. I was never my true authentic self because I didn't even know what my own values and beliefs were. I didn't have a moral compass. It even showed up in my friendships in a way that I became clingy, but then I'd be like, well, I don't want to get clingy with you because then you're going to reject me anyway. So when I was rejected by men, I was like probably like a bunny boiler, if I'm honest. Oh my God. I didn't not to be dismissive of it and not to be like slagging myself off, so to speak, or, you know, discrediting myself. And I think it was not having that self-worth and not having that love that I strongly needed and desired. And I guess I was desperate looking back.
Bless you.
And it wasn't until I then met my now husband and then got married and became a mum that I thought, oh my God, I need to deal with this. I need to have the therapy because until I do, I might start doing things that are still familiar to me, because in relationships, I was looking for the familiarity of being rejected. I was always looking for the man who actually wasn't available emotionally. That was the repeating pattern.
Yeah.
You know, and that was something that through therapy, I look back, I did inner child work. I did journaling. I mean, I can go through in a while how I helped myself and still maintain my father wounds because, you know, I've healed in my mind. You'll know from NLP, one time I could picture him here, but now I can't. My dad, I can't even get him in my head. He's gone, a bit like the switch. You know, he's completely gone. Like he's not there, and I'm that. But it definitely showed up in so many ways in my life that impacted it in a negative way, but also ironically it's affected me in a really good way because here I am now as a therapist
seeing the beauty in all the
silver lining.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's you know, this is the beautiful thing about you know, what's the self-transformation, if I can't think of the right word, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
Especially people that are attracted to therapy because they've had so much shit in their lives, and they go to therapy, and you know, like they get interested in it, and then maybe they do a course, and then all of a sudden they're working on themselves, because when you do courses, you work on each other. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Everybody, like in America, you know, they say not everyone's got a therapist. I think Because like you said, we're walking around with unconscious motivations and reactions and perceptions about things. We have no idea what they're for, and it's like, you know, really holding us back and not allowing us to be our authentic selves. And like you doing what you did, sort of in a way, has helped your children, because you haven't steered that relationship with any of your bullshit, basically. Do you see what I mean? Because you've actually been, you know, you've got on with it and faced it, and a lot of people need to do this, you know, so it's very inspiring.
It is. And I think that's the thing, you know, because it shows up in so many shitty different ways in your life. It's knowing and having that hope that, you know, you can change. You know, there's that saying, leopard can't change as it spots. What a load of tosh. It physically can't innately well. But the other fact that I just want to touch on is how your body keeps the score as well, like with your nervous system. So especially if you're disorganized, you're always going to be on edge. You know, you're going to be hypervigilant. So that's where people can get highly anxious because they haven't had their needs met, so they don't know any different. And this is what can cause things like bipolar disorder and the CPTSD. You know, things happen. Your body keeps a score. It will show up, manifest as illnesses. You know, it could be, I don't know, so many different things. For me, I just always avoided certain things. I mean, I still have difficulty now with certain friendships because I have been literally ghosted by friends. And I think to myself, what did I do wrong? And I'm like, hang on a minute. Whoa. So I sit back and I journal about it, because I like to reflect now. And that's one thing I've learned through my healing journey is that, you know, if I'm at fault, I want to know if it's me. You know, it's not about that ego, because our ego gets in there and it's like, woohoo, come and play. You're like, no, I'm not listening to you. I need to work through this, and I need to identify my faults as well. And this is why it's always a work in progress, because if I find myself getting triggered by hearing someone shout, like I will go out, I know this from a memory, if I see people shouting at their child, I immediately, my body goes like that. So I know, I'm like, that's my body responding to an emotion from a memory. Do you get what I mean? So
I think it's fantastic. I love being triggered. I mean, to be honest, I don't get triggered. I'm not blowing my own trumpet, and I've done a lot of work on myself last 25 years. But like, I do trigger a lot of people, to be honest. I trigger a lot of people. I'm like, my nickname's the Triggerer.
Triggerer. Oh God.
I haven't got any friends.
Oh, bless you.
I know. But it's just want to have a quick look at this. What Kaz has written. This is resonating so much with me. It's frightening to me. Perhaps that's why I didn't stay married long or have children. And these are just some of the things. And she also goes on to say, oh, Kerry. I was a shopaholic too. I also sought validation and love with men I met. I can totally relate to this. Absolutely. I think so many people can. And where's the guys talking about their experiences? Because obviously,
yes, I'd love to hear about the guys, because
you're a missing father.
And the other thing as well is that the key thing that I also think a lot of people can relate to. So I said about the body keeps a score, but what can happen, you'll know this, Dave, from your experience in therapy, is that the suppression and repressing memories, but also ignoring those emotions because of being frightened. It was Kaz who said she was frightened, right? And it's actually the beauty in the work is facing what you're avoiding. And, you know, there's, dependent on the trauma, if you've got big trauma, you would need to do something called bottom up therapy, because those memories haven't been stored where they should be in your brain. So what you need to do is you can do breath work, you can do art therapy, dance, music, singing bowls,
integral eye movement therapy, Claire.
Integral eye movement therapy. You don't have to talk. And that allows your body, you can just process this stuff. You know, it's about releasing it. I had someone, it was actually a mother wound, and we did emotional detox. That was the first part of her journey.
Yeah.
And the emotional detox, which you're familiar with, the Carl Smith, that was a really beautiful experience, because she didn't know what to expect. Obviously I briefed her on it, but not too much, because it's an organic process where you're just going through that journey of accepting, because you have to be ready, ladies and gents. You have to be ready to want to heal. Something will happen in your life, whether that's before you become a mum, before you get married, before you're in a relationship, before you get in a career, where you think, I want to show up as the fucking best version of myself, excuse my French, and just show the world and myself. You've got to want to do it for yourself. Have compassion for yourself, okay? And say, I've had enough. I need to work through this. But
Because
be
you
gentle.
deserve this. You deserve it. You know, it's going back to that
does.
point you said about loving yourself. I always say this is the fundamental thing that we all need, and we all need to have that. Like, I really like who I am. Do you know what I mean? I no problem saying it to people. I would never say that 20 years ago. You know, like how I got affected. If you don't mind me just mentioning a few things.
No,
I mean,
go for it.
Such low self-confidence, you know, it was just unreal. I really didn't like myself. I was basically a failure. I felt like everyone was looking at me like a failure, so I was like a full self-fulfilling prophecy, you know what I mean? I had no confidence whatsoever. And then I just came across my saving grace, like yours, was your work. I think you said that you put a lot of your energy into your work. Mine was that I was quite a deep thinker. So I used to think about world quite unusually, really, quite weirdly. And I just came across, I was actually doing a business called Amway. I think everyone's heard of Amway, haven't they? It's one of these multi-level marketing companies, where you've got to get people in your business and sell products and all that.
Network marketing.
No, it's a bit like that, basically. But they used to do a book a month, right? So they had like what's the word? Like, they had a program to help you be a better person. So they had a book a month. So it'd be like The Magic of Thinking Big, Think and Grow Rich, just all these classic books, you know. And that was really my first experience of like reading something and thinking, fuck, you know, I'm not like that, you know, I'm missing something here. And that was like my journey. It all started there quite a long time ago. And I got to the point whereby I actually liked who I was. And then it didn't matter one flying fuck what happens in my life, as long as I'm like try to be the best version of myself and always come from a good place. You know what I mean? Things didn't affect me anymore. Do you see what I mean? So anyway, I don't want
That's
to talk
brilliant. No, that's really good, because it does affect men so differently. Like, I know people who've turned to coke and are now drug addicts, alcoholics, you know, because they're suppressing it. Like Gabor Mate, honestly, get his books. If that's one of the things I recommend, definitely go to Gabor Mate. Gabor Mate. So it's Gabor.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
Gabor Mate. Yeah, he is
Mate.
phenomenal. He's an expert in trauma. And the guy Essen van Bilk, I think that's his, or Volk. If you look up Your Body Keeps the Score.
Okay.
The author of that, he deals with trauma as well. And so, like, the bottom-up therapy side of stuff. And so I will tell you a little bit about how I started my healing process, because if that helps people, because there's a lot of books out there, okay, about the father wound, mother wound, emotionally unavailable, this, that, the other. And sometimes you might get a book and you can relate to it, but it doesn't quite hit the mark. They're not speaking your voice, your language. And I'll come on to love languages as well. And so I first started like with the psychiatrist, and then I had counselling, and all I did was cry. I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried. And all it did, it was just me talking about my dad and how I felt, but I never felt like I was getting anywhere. And I'm not dismissing or discrediting counselling or psychiatry, because everybody will be very different with their story and what works for them. You know, some people might not like hypnotherapy or want to do that, you know, and that's okay, because I've always been that therapist, and you're probably the same, Dave, that if someone isn't the right fit for me, I will gladly pass them on to someone who I know will be. I don't, because it's never about us. It's always about the client, 100% all the time. And so with that, I had some hypnotherapy. I've also done breath work. But on a daily basis, it's really important for me, especially with my nervous system, for me to be able to regulate myself so that I'm grounded for the day ahead. And I actually put a post up on my Facebook recently, because I did ask a question about how people start their day, how they like to start their day. And it's a really fundamental, crucial part every day of what you do in the morning. It's that consistency. And I'm not talking about the people who get up and are motivated and get rich. This is about you functioning as a human being every day if you've gone through some form of trauma, whether that's father wound or otherwise.
Yeah.
Get up at a time, ideally, where you will not be disturbed by children if you have any. So, you know, make that commitment to yourself. That's the first thing you need to decide, is how committed am I to myself to show up for myself. And so you'll wake up. I always have a hot water and a slice of lemon, which is exactly what I've got here. I won't have caffeine before bed. And it's a good detoxifier, but it also helps, you know, get everything out your system. And it's something you should have. It actually is quite rejuvenating and good for your skin and all those good things. Look it up. It's amazing. So I have that first thing in the morning. Then I'll do a Joe Dispenza heart and I think it's brain coherence. And he talks about the energy field around you. Okay. I've actually written my own meditations, which I'm launching soon in a menopause thing, which I said to you I was going to touch on. And so this enables me to make sure that I'm vibrating, because I'm spiritual as a person as well. And I'm still learning that. I'm not by any means an expert, because I'm still a work in progress with that. I will set it up for myself to be okay, so that if anything comes at me throughout the day, I am at a point and a level, steady point in my head where if something negative comes my way, I won't react. Yeah. I'll reflect and think, I'm going to choose my battles. And do I want to be right? And do I want to be happy? Okay. And by doing that meditation, it's about 15 minutes in the morning. And then I do a breath work, and the breath work helps to regulate my nervous system to feel grounded. And it's a simple breathing in and out just through my nose, like doing 30 of those. And then on the last breath of 30, holding my breath for 30 seconds and then letting it out, and then doing the same thing through my nose 30 times. And then on 31, let it out and then hold your breath 30 seconds. And then that's it. I'm like, I feel, and then I stretch, you know, because you've been sleeping in a bed for X amount of hours, right? Whether that's a consistently good night's sleep or not. And I'm like stretch, and I'm like this, I'm like, and then I feel ready for my day, you know. Like the other day, I got up, and it's very random. I ended up doing a deep clean in the fridge because I just felt like I could take on the world that day, and it needed doing. I thought, oh, may as well. Nobody's up yet. I'm just going to do it. You know, it makes you feel like you can take on the world because you've looked after yourself first.
So important.
You know, if you don't look after yourself, then how on earth are you supposed to deal with the everyday life that throws at us, especially now? You know? So that's what I would say. And the other thing, coming off that topic slightly, which I said I'd mention, is that one of the other things I specialize in, because you'll see it if you follow me on TikTok, is that I initially started off with menopause, and now I've focused on the father wound. And the reason for that is because I specialize in both. So I kind of like flip the switch, so to speak. And if you have not dealt with some trauma from the past, whether that's the father wound or otherwise, and you're experiencing the perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, and you have, this is by the Mayo Clinic, a study, if you have 6 hours sleep or less a night, that does actually affect how your menopause will play out. So you might get worse hot flashes. So your symptoms may worsen because it affects your hormones. You know, when you think about if you're a disorganized attachment style and you've never processed that trauma, you're on hypervigilant, so you're already going to have a high level of cortisol because that's what's released. You're on high alert, so your cortisol is like not at a steady level that it should be, and cortisol is something that's effective for your adrenal glands when you then have the menopause. So it ends up being that vicious loop, and if you don't deal with that, it affects your sleep. It has the domino effect, as you know, Dave, where it affects every aspect of your life, and you're already probably tearing your hair out dependent on how bad your symptoms are. So that's another reason why I specialize in the menopause, and I'm actually going to be releasing a workbook next year, beginning of the next year, which focuses on the psychological aspects of the menopause rather than the nutrition stuff, because I'm not a nutritionist. It's got the educational side in it, but this is more about emotional regulation, because if you've got an attachment style that's disorganized, anxious, avoidant, you know, you could have a certain dysregulation with your emotions. You won't be emotionally mature enough to deal with things in a relationship. So if you had an argument and you saw that argument with your mum and dad when they were little because they divorced, you'd be thinking, oh my God, they're going to reject me. Oh my God, and you get like your emotions are not going to be at a level of maturity for you to say, okay, let's talk about this. You know, how can we come to a resolution here? You're going to be like, oh my God, they're going to leave me, or whatever it shows up in that way for you. So that's sort of like something else I just wanted to briefly touch on.
It's interesting that, because with IEMT, we obviously work on emotional imprints and stuff, and get the brain, simple model, get the brain to put them back where they were supposed to be, if you see what I mean.
Okay, good.
But we also work with identity, because like you just said, then you can regress in a moment to much younger, when maybe when you noticed your mum and dad arguing, and like what you said, you will expect something, you know. So with IEMT, it's a great tool for using the eye movements to basically get the person to operate from their current age, rather than regressing to 9 or 6 or 15 or whatever. So it might be something that might interest you to check that out. But yeah, very good.
Is that bilateral stimulation based? Is it like the?
I mean, basically we move the eyes on different axes. So some of them are straight across, some of them are on angles, some of them are like a figure of 8. Yeah. The identity work is normally like on a figure of 8, because it seems to work better for that, but you can do it the other way as well. But really good technique. They might have an issue, so you get the issue, and then you tell them where do you think that issue is in your body, and then you'll get a place in the body, and then you'll say this particular thing, I want you to go back to a time when you remember being like this, so you're regressing them as well. And then obviously you say to them, you know, how old are you now? And they might say, oh, I'm like 10, and they're like 45. Do you see what I mean? So it's a great technique. It's worth checking out. I think Kerry's done it. I'm not sure. I don't know if you've done IEMT, Kerry. But yeah, it's a really good technique for that particular thing.
Really,
you know, identity work. So like, I'm ugly, I'm fat, I don't know if I'm a he or a she, and all that sort of stuff, you know.
That would be good, especially now. There's quite a lot of people who are in that identity crisis, isn't there? Bless them. So
yeah, no, absolutely.
That sounds really interesting.
I want to say to people, because we're going to have lots of people watching this afterwards as well in the recording that's going to go on YouTube, that Claire's got a fantastic TikTok channel. Oh my God, that's how I came across. How I met Claire. I was watching her videos, and she was just such a great communicator, and the way she got her points across, I thought was fantastic, because you get a lot of people on TikTok talking about different techniques and a lot of it gets a little bit boring for me because it's the same old shit. It's not shit, but like, you know, but there was something about the way you did your videos. It was refreshing. And what's your
Thank you.
YouTube? What's your TikTok channel? How can they find you on that?
I think it is just called Enlighten Your Mind Therapy. I'm sure it is.
Is it?
Which is the name of my. I'm pretty
I'll
sure it is. I haven't been on there for a while, guys. I have to be honest, because my personal life has been hectic.
let me put your website on there, because that's quite important, isn't it? There we go.
The other bit of tips. Can I give some more tips, Dave? Is that okay?
Of course you can. Yeah, no, crack on.
So, so when people work with me, they'll get a workbook. Because I don't know about yourself, but a lot of the time people think that when they go to a therapist, that once the changes have happened, which is amazing, and they feel a different person, and suddenly they feel more confident, and you know, things like that. It is really good. And you know, if they were particularly angry, you know, if they haven't dealt with anger, it doesn't get rid of anger. It doesn't get rid of stuff. You're still a human being. Okay. You still need to function every day. And like I said to you earlier, when I said about, you know, what I do in the morning and this helps me function for the day ahead. What I also do of an evening is sometimes, and I'll be very organic with myself, I ask myself, what do I need this evening? What is on my mind? So I might do a little worry section, but I will do it at least 2 to 3 hours before bed, because you don't want to do something like a worry journal before bed, for the obvious reason that you don't want to end up like worrying. And you've got to ask yourself, where is the evidence for this worry? How do I know this is going to happen? Yeah, it's like Socratic questioning. It's that whole concept of like, well, where's your evidence? You know, what you've got to be kind to yourself. That compassion thing comes again. Or sometimes I'll just journal, and you know, I'll speak to my spirit guide or whatever takes my fancy that night, and say, what has been on my mind today? What didn't go well? What did go well? But I like to focus more on the positives than the negatives. But if something is played on my mind, because a lot of stuff we can begin to overthink. And you don't need to overthink. You can train your mind, because it always have that negative bias, won't it, in your brain? So it's about retraining that brain to say, actually, I have had this outcome, and this is the positive side of what's happened. So I either journal, I do breathing exercises, because if on occasion, if I've had like something happen in the day and I haven't offloaded it properly, because being a busy mum, sometimes it doesn't happen. You've got to look at the reality of life as well. Sometimes I'll do deep breathing, and I will almost do like a form of self-hypnosis, and I will make sure I do like the body check, you know, making sure that my muscles are relaxed. You know, you go into your feet, then you go into your legs, and you go into your buttocks, and you go into, you know, you just do that inner guided self-hypnosis to really relax your mind. Imagine, you know, your happy place, whatever that might be for you, because it might be different every single night, whatever floats your boat. And it's making sure that you just work on yourself every day. That's not, you know, nobody needs fixing, nobody's broken, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that what happened in your, you know, childhood years, or maybe it might have been later in life, you might have had a traumatic accident, whatever, aside from the father wound. It's about processing it, working through it. And when you're ready to, and you find the right therapist for you, do your homework, look for the right person for you, and because you'll know instantly. For me, it's like looking, and it's probably a really bad analogy, but it's like walking into a house. You just know it's the one for you. You'll just know when you speak to a therapist on the phone, and you know, work with them, work through it, have the patience, the time, and be compassionate with yourself, and you will get there. You know, you just need to find a way that works for you, and everyone's different.
Absolutely, Claire. What great advice. And I'm very similar to you, actually. I don't do it as often as I should, but I'm a bit of a waver, yeah. So when I'm riding the wave, I'm waking up in the morning, I'm doing conscious breathing. I'll have great gratitude for everything in my life and the people around me. I may do some EFT tapping or something
Oh
just
yeah.
to like get rid of some crap from the week or whatever. I'll look at, like you, look at what's gone on in the week, and if I've been triggered, I will look at it in the most balanced way as I can to see whether there's anything that I can. I'm not afraid. I think it's really important not to be afraid to admit when like you're triggered by something. It's like it's not a problem. It's a great thing. I think it's fantastic. Like I want to be triggered tomorrow. Bring it on, because I want to be able to. Like, I don't want to be triggered, and it's okay to be triggered, but at the same time, I don't want to be triggered. It's like everything's okay, but like it isn't okay, but it is okay. It's a bit of a weird one,
I think that thing, your point there is, it's all about, to me, what I'm hearing and what we've spoken about this evening, all relates to self-awareness. And when you've been through this type of trauma as well, it's like you've never spent the time understanding yourself. I certainly didn't. I didn't know what I wanted out of a life. I just threw myself into work. And it wasn't until I was a mum and a wife that I thought, what do I actually want? I've carried this. I've carried this for so long. I don't want to carry it anymore. I don't need it. I'm a human being. I need to function in the best way I can for myself and those around me, because your wounds impact other people if you don't deal with them, which is the sad thing as well. Like if you're avoidant, it could show up as a disordered eating because maybe food wasn't provided for you when you were younger. I mean, it can show up in a variety of different ways, things like that, but it's about self-awareness, compassion, really working on your self-worth.
It's surprising, Claire, how many people just have got no idea, and I see it in people. You probably do too. You'll just be out people watching, and you'll see something unfold, and you think, "Oh my God, what a shame!" Because they're probably never ever gonna like have be what's the word, introspective, go within themselves, have that, even that knowledge to do that. They're just on that merry-go-round of crap, living out the same old shit, the same old behaviors. And some people, as you know, do this all their lives. You know what I mean? And
that's
if you
because
believe
that's because they always say that's the way I am. I've always been that way.
Exactly.
That's
And
me.
just all those sort of things like that, their brains like, okay, well, that's the way you are. That's the way you'll always be. It's like, it's so important what we say to ourselves, isn't it, Claire? And that was quite big in my life. I came across a book by Shad Heimster called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. One of the most greatest fucking books you've ever read, because it actually shows you what you say to yourself is so important with what you say to yourself. And I think everybody's guilty of it. We all, like, in times in our life, some more than others, will say, "Oh, what a fucking idiot I am. What a wanker. Oh, my memory's so shit." And we just remind ourselves how bad we are, And obviously the old whatever's going on behind here is taking it all in. And, that's feeding that. So it'll often give you what you feed it, because
Exactly.
like I think the supposition is that the unconscious mind always has your best interest at heart. Whatever behavior it is, it thinks it's helping you, So if you're like feeding it with loads of crap, it will do what it needs to do to facilitate that for you, I believe, So like, and it's part of starting to enjoy who you are as a person. It's part of that process of being kind to yourself, and like what you were saying, actually make an effort for yourself, and spend some time for yourself. Turn the TV off. You can go without TV for an hour. Spend that hour working on yourself, doing deep breathing, like you said, Claire.
And yoga is amazing. Yoga, honestly, I cried through COVID doing yoga. I follow Yoga with Adrienne, and wow, it was beautiful. That was classified as bottom up therapy as well, because that's body movement. Yeah, that released a lot of stuff.
I mean, I'm getting on a bit, and I'm like 58, and you know, like I'm
You look
starting to do the
great.
old thing. I start to like go down and go, whoa, you know, make the groans and noises and all that. But I've got to get back to my Pilates, because I know it's so good for you for when you get older. But I just got a couple of things here. What's going on here? So Kaz says, apologies, I've got to go. I volunteer for the RNLI and needed. Oh wow, good for you, Kaz. But then she says, false alarm, I'm back, so that's good. And then we've got it's all happening in Kaz's house. And then we've got Lisa Sullivan. When a chronic person please says that, hang on, can you understand that? When a chronic people please says that just who I am, how can you support change, or can you? So Lisa, you might excuse type errors again. So what do you think she's trying to say here, Claire? When a chronic person,
right? Is she talking about? I'm deciphering that as if you've got someone who is a chronic people pleaser, and they say that's just who I am. That's how I'm interpreting that. I don't know.
Yeah, you've got it bang on, Claire. You've got it bang on.
I think that's what she's saying. Yes. That's going to be down to like an attachment style as well. It's probably going to be your avoidant, and it might be a bit disorganized. That would be so. What you can do if you go online and look up attachment styles, you can actually do an online quiz, just so you can have an idea, because you'll probably be a little bit of different ones, and it can interchange. It's interchangeable based on everything that happens in your life. It's not like, say, that's you forever, because different things, you'll grow and change as a person.
Changing,
do you know what I mean? And I think if you first step is to identify what it is, and then you can work through how to change that people pleasing side of it. And it isn't going to be till you actually go through therapy that you will be able to get to the root of what's caused that people pleasing behavior. Yeah, so that's the key thing.
Also, as well, you know, when we say go for therapy, you can actually do therapy on yourself. Everyone, you know, you can. There's every technique under the sun on YouTube, and you know, obviously sometimes you need a therapist to facilitate it, because but in some cases there are lots of stuff out there where you can actually heal yourself. You know, so if you can't afford a therapist, there's still loads of stuff you can do. There's loads of stuff out there. So, and
that's why I'm going to be developing that's why I'm developing this workbook for menopause, so that people, if they couldn't afford me, for example, they could do that in their own time. And I'm actually creating one for the father wound as well.
Wow, it's so exciting. Oh my God.
So then people have that choice. It's about people having choice, because it's hard times for people, and I'm very mindful of the fact that not everybody can afford a therapist, but there's a lot of people out there who are very guilty, because I've done it in the past. You know, we're human. You get the self-help book, you have those intentions, but unless you put in the action, nothing is going to happen.
Yeah, do you know what? Yeah, absolutely right, Claire. It's all about commitment, and this is something that I've struggled with over the years. You know, actually being committed. You know, and I realized. I thought, fuck. Now I know the answer. I have to force myself to do this. Sometimes that's what I have to do. I have to force myself. But once I'm in that groove, I normally enjoy it. You know.
It feels good, doesn't it? It's that discomfort, because you're not used to being kind. If you're not used to a certain way, it can feel very alien, and you start to question it. And it is normal to kind of want to reject it, because your body doesn't know any different. That's like almost your subconscious saying, hang on a minute, this doesn't feel natural, this doesn't feel normal. But then that's why you see a hypnotherapist, because they'll get to the root of why that is happening.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was talking about commitment, I was associating it with training, you know, because I like to run along the seafront, and I often see people running along the seafront, and I know for a fact not all of them have got up in the morning and go, woohoo, I'm going for a run, I can't wait. You know, someone will get up in the morning, they just cannot be bothered doing it, but they force themselves to do it, you know, and they reap the benefits for that. So that's really good. So Claire, how do you work? Do you work just face to face? Do you work online? You know, how you know? Yeah.
I do face to face, but it's appointment only because I have to make
Okay.
a few logistical arrangements at home because my
Okay.
husband works at home as well, you see.
Mm-hmm.
And then I use Skype as an alternative. So I'm international. So if anybody is sort of like having issues anywhere in the world or anywhere else in the UK, they can always reach out to me through Skype. And yeah, I can help people with just having a free 30-minute consultation with me initially,
Mm-hmm.
because they might not even know it's the father wound. You know, it
Mm,
depends on how it's
absolutely.
sabotaging their relationships. Like I say, all the
Mm-hmm.
different ways it affected me. I was a shopaholic.
Mm.
But yeah, so it totally varies. And if I'm not the right person, because I personally don't deal with drug or alcoholic addiction, but I
Mm-hmm.
know plenty of other therapists who do. So, you know, if
Yeah.
they wanted to, reach out to me as the first port of call, that's more than fine. But I wouldn't help that particular area because that's a specialism.
Okay. So where are you based exactly?
I'm based in Gillingham in Kent.
Okay. Okay. So do you work from like when you're not working at home? Do you have like a consulting room out there? Like do you work
No,
from a place in
it's actually No, it's actually in my front lounge, and it's
Okay.
very
No, that's perfect.
relaxing.
Yeah.
It's like I like
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
candle.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I've got
Yeah.
one of those
Yeah.
reclining couches.
I
It's
love
very
it.
chilled.
I don't do a lot of face to face personally. I sort of miss it because I do pretty much all of my work online, and I know it works really well online. But I
It
do
does.
like actually having the physical presence of somebody because I think you've got that sort of energetic exchange. There's just something extra to it, you know. It's really
It's
good.
personal preference, isn't it? And it's also
Yeah,
based on personal situation, because at least then, because one of the key ways of me working is, I always say, it's part of the processing once they've gone through the hypnotherapy, is for
yeah,
them ideally to have a nap, because then that's going to allow the processing part to take place, because at least then if they're at home they can
yeah.
do that straight away.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, look, Claire, it's got to that time where
Yeah.
we're going to have to
It's
go
flown
soon.
by.
It has. I've really enjoyed it. I knew it was going to be a great chat. I was so excited to have you on here. You know, for the very first time I saw you on TikTok, and you had something interesting to offer, and I think
Thank you.
it'll be very useful for people watching this if they think they've got father wound issues, or any sort of issues that resemble some of the things Claire's mentioned tonight. Get in contact with her, give her a shout, because she obviously knows what she's talking about. Very professional, and
Thank you
bloody
for
amazing.
inviting me, Dave.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I want to say thank you to everyone that's tuned in tonight, because
Yes, thank you.
obviously we are, this channel is basically to educate the general public on what's available out there, because like we said before, there's lots of people on that merry-go-round of behavior, and this is an opportunity to, maybe they might come across this video or something, and it gives them a bit of hope, and lots of other guests that I've had on the show. I think it's great. I enjoy doing them as well. I meet lovely people like Claire, and I always learn something from these as well. It's like incredible. And it's really great. And we've got some interesting guests coming up, and I will be putting it on Facebook for people to check out. So on that note, thank you so much to you, Claire. And thank you to everybody that tuned in and left comments. We really, really appreciate it. Thanks, Kaz. And here is Kerry. That was brilliant. Going to check out Attachment Styles and your TikTok now. TikTok's great, Kerry. You'll love it. So there you go. So everyone for watching, thanks for watching. Thank you for joining us, Claire.
Thank you. And, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Absolutely. Bye-bye, everybody. Woohoo!
Bye.
Brilliant. Love it.